So here we have for the sandstone the same identification that we have done previously for the phyllites. I produced a panoramic view of the weathering profile. Then I came back to the field, and based on those field tests that I mentioned before and the observations of these materials, I have identified the stress relief joints in yellow, the tectonical joint in black, and the contact between different weather materials that occurs along the profile. So this was done for sandstone in the same way that we have done to phyllites. For basalts, the approach was a little bit different because basalts doesn't have stress relief joint, as they are lavas that are formed over the surface. There's no stress relief acting over this kind of rock, but in the other way, we can have, it's very common, to have some cooling fractures, mainly 3 vertical families, sets of vertical fractures, and usually 1 horizontal one. So, besides not having stress relief joint, we have another kind of structure caused by cooling that is responsible for the controls of the weathering acting over the basalts or the tuffs. So, this is a view, panoramic view of a road cut, and we can see here that we have a layer here, and this is another flow, lava flow. So we have several lava flows. This lava flow here comes from here, some rock, here to here, residual soil, and we can see that the most important parameter to identify the different layers that occurs within this weathering profile is the soil to rock proportion, because what happens here is that the weathering occurs along the fractures and from outside to inside, letting some blocks immersed inside the residual soil or a very weathered material that surround these rocks. And with the increase of the weathering, what happens is that the soil proportion increases and the rock proportion decreases. So here's the same. I made the panoramic view that I showed you in the last picture, the last slide. Then I come back to the field and try to identify the several rock mass weathering layers that occurs this, and collect samples to take to the lab to characterize all this material here. Okay? So here we have a detail over there. So here are the laboratory tests. Sorry, there is a mistake over there. I have made, as I mentioned, several types of field, sorry, this is field tests, this is right, sorry. I have made several field tests in order to try to characterize the weathering materials. From all the tests that I have made, some present very good connection with the weather. Mainly rock to soil ratio, that used to be a parameter used by the beginners of the study of weathering profiles. The fracture index as well, the openness or aperture of the rock fracture, and surprisingly also the joint coefficient of strength. The problem here with this joint coefficient of strength is that I have used a Smith hammer, an N-type Smith hammer. That's not very good for more weak materials. But even though, if I take a closer look on this Phylite 05 here, I can see that the GCS is able to identify the different layers that I have observed in the field. If what I will do when I come back to Brazil is try to use an L type that is better for weak rocks, and try to see if it also is possible to differentiate the more weathered terms of the weathering profiles. But for the more sound ones, it is working okay. And I have done this also for the sandstone and for the basalts, and I have achieved the same result. Here we have, now we have some lab tests. Here you have the results from density, porosity, and water absorption capacity, and we can see that if we take a look on the specific profiles, we can see that the density is increasing with the weathering, which is not kind of the result we expect. But if we take a look on this profile here, we can see the opposite behavior. What happens is that for the more weathered layers, there is a lot of, in this case of phyllites, there is a lot of biotites in these phyllites that I will show you later. And these biotites free lots of iron oxide. This iron oxide gets into the openness and the voids of the weathered rock and increases the density and reduces the porosity. So it's a specific behavior of phyllites that I have found one paper in the literature that have achieved the same results. So care should be taken when you are analyzing this data, because you should connect this with the mineralogy in order to check if there is any mineral that can be responsible for this behavior. But when you take a look on the average results, you can see what is the expected behavior. That it's a diminishing of the density with the weathering, an increase of the porosity, and an increase in water absorption capacity, as we can see here in these graphs. Okay? For the layers 4 to 5, we have a small increase, decrease in porosity, and almost the same density, but as I have mentioned, is expected because of the mineralogy. Here are the results for the sandstones, and here we can see that for the sandstones, because there is not too much biotite and not too much iron oxide. There is some iron oxide, but not as much as in phyllites. We also can see an increase in the porosity and a decrease in the density. There is a point here for the class 3 to 4 that is not quite in the same trends, but I have not evaluated this result specifically. What's the reason for that result over there? But I'll have to take a look why this is happening. But if we take a look on the more important classes, you can see that there's a trend here that's most important. Here we have some examples for the microscopy. You can see a class 3 phyllite here, a class 4, a class 4 to class 5. And you can easily see the freedom of the iron oxides and the increase of the microfracturing with the weathering. So this quantitative data that you can take from the microscopy is very important, together with the mineralogy, because the mineralogy can explain lots of the problems that we are observing into the matrix scale or rock masses scale as well. So here the same for sandstone. You can see that the iron oxide content is lower, but there is an increase in the iron oxide content from more sound materials to more weathered materials. Also, there is some clay mineral production here. It cannot be seen in this uncrossed nickels, but you can see when you take a look on the crossed nickels image as well that I have made. Here, finally, are the examples from the basalts, and you can see lots of feldspars, and again, microfractures, and again, an increase in the clay content, clay mineral content, and the iron oxide content with the weather. So it's very important to connect this mineralogy description, mineral characterization, with the physical and mechanical tests in order to understand the results that you get from it. And here we have some results from the microscopic indexes. Here's the microfracturing and the IMP, that's micropetrographic index, the sound to weather material ratio. And you can see that very strong trend with the weathering increase. For the phyllites, although the results were not so clear as for sandstone, but because on the same transition from layer 4 to layer 4 to 5, as we have observed for the physical results. And the answer here is the same. as we have several iron oxides being formed and precipitating into these voids, it can cause this kind of sealing in the microfracturing, and here no, this increase in the micropetrograph index is actually showing that the iron oxide content is increasing because of this weathering. So these are connected with this, that are connected with the physical property results. Here the point load results for phyllites and sandstones, and again you can see a reduction of the strength for both rocks. This is a very consistent result, and it's in accordance with what we have observed with GCS, the Smith-Hammer results, and with what we had observed in the field with the qualitative tests that we have made as well. So, partial conclusions up to now. I'm finishing this research, but the final report will be only finished by January next year. So, up to now, the morphology, weathering profile of these three rock types are understood. We have very detailed data that allow us to define what is the typical morphology of these rocks for this kind of weather and this kind of climate. We have identified the characteristics and parameters that allows good differentiation between the weathering rates in the fields, mainly soil to rock ratio, spacement or fracture index, aperture, and presence of stress relief joints, or columnar joints in the case of the basalts. And you have some identified that physical parameters are good, show good agreement with the weathering as well. But attention must be paid when we have some minerals that can change to another kind of mineral that can produce some change in these results. So if you have, as an example, iron oxide precipitation, this can increase your strength as well. And finally, the JCS result could be used as an indication of this weathering. I will try to improve this knowledge when I come back to Brazil, doing more tests in the Brazilian conditions for the same rock types. The point load test results were very good and very in good accordance with the weathering profile description that we have made in the field. And the fixed section description produced some qualitative and quantitative results that are very important to connect all this information together, because you have the minerals to explain some unexpected behavior that you have observed in the test. So that's it. Thank you very much for your attention. And here we have my contacts, just in case you need it. Thank you very much. Goodbye.